Hello, kia ora. I'm Philip Duncan from Weather Watch TV on YouTube with your Australia-only forecast right through until Sunday. And we kick off Monday's video with a tropical cyclone, a severe tropical cyclone in Western Australia through the central parts. Now, the good news is it is offshore. So the windy weather is brushing areas here, but for the most part, that damaging wind, that is offshore. So there is some good news. Places like Karratha now seeing the worst of the winds pass through. It probably hasn't even been that bad for you. And now the worst of those winds passing places like Exmouth. On the other side, we've got a larger low pressure zone, but it's much weaker. So large and lazy. That's producing a bit of a southerly flow for coastal parts of New South Wales and a south to southeasterly coming in for coastal parts of Queensland. And the high pressure zone south of Aussie, that is also producing a southeasterly wind, dropping temperatures, which some are telling me is actually quite refreshing. But let's focus on Tropical Sean, spelt differently to Sean, who works behind the scenes here and edits our videos. But this is how we look here as we go into the next couple of days. So at the moment, when we recorded this, it was Category 3, severe, Category 3 cyclone. In the darker red shading here and the purple shading, that is a sign of the damaging winds. Outside this next circle, which comes in around near Onslow, Exmouth and Ningaloo, that's where you got gale force winds. And typically gale force winds don't cause too many problems. The odd branch or tree down, maybe you get a power cut here and there, but otherwise that's not the problem. It's this area out here in the red shading, that is the damaging stuff, and that is offshore. And as we go through later today and into tomorrow, it keeps on tracking away from land. This is as close as it gets. Big picture here from the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre shows the storm basically tracking along the outer edges of your coastline. It does come in further to the south here, but by the time that happens, it's very likely to be no different than any other kind of wind and rain event or shower event that you get down in the southwest of Western Australia. So let's move along now, take a look at the forecast. Here we are on Tuesday afternoon and evening. Pretty much dry around the eastern side. Got a couple of showers for Queensland, not much in there, but could be a couple of severe thunderstorms, but otherwise not too much going on. Pretty dry, in fact, across Queensland. Certainly dry. New South Wales, the A.C.T, Tasmania, Victoria, South Australia. You might get an isolated shower. It's not going to do much. Northern Territory is mostly dry, and they've got this little bit of rain out here tracking past as Cyclone Sean tracks on by. And by Wednesday, the tropical cyclone is well offshore now. It is mostly dry for coastal Western Australia. From about Karratha southwards, you might still see a couple of showers in there, but there's not very much going on. And a bit of windy weather further to the south here on the southern coastline, thanks to a wee bit of low pressure inland and that high pressure zone that is over the Great Australian Bight, although moving eastwards towards Tasmania as we go through Wednesday. And that puts the squeeze on here. High pressure south of Australia, and then up around the outback of New South Wales, there's low pressure. In between the two, a squash zone. Windy easterlies for Victoria and parts of South Australia. That carries on into Wednesday and Thursday too. Although Thursday, it may ease back a wee bit as you start to see those winds tilting more southeasterly. Low pressure around Tasmania, that'll encourage a windy northerly coming down. Some thunderstorms coming into Australia, not very much. Into New South Wales, not very much for you there. And around Queensland also, similar story. A few isolated thunderstorms, similar story going into the Northern Territory and into the Kimberley. Again, these thunderstorms aren't very widespread. They're not as big as we've been seeing in previous years. It is pretty calm and quiet, to be honest with you, up around the tropics. Now on Friday, here's the big picture. You can see the tropics, there's not much going on. The blues that you see in the map here, that's at the very bottom of the scale. So you might see some big cloud buildups around the Kimberley region, around Northern Territories, the northern half of the Northern Territory, and then over into Queensland you'll see some showers, but there's not a lot. Some severe thunderstorms do come in to that southeastern corner of Queensland, but otherwise there's not much going on. And I did get a complaint the other day from someone south of Sydney saying, you don't talk about us enough. I get that, but there's not a lot happening there at the moment. You do get some rain, most of that is offshore, so most of that wet weather is coming into the forest bush areas on the border there between Victoria and New South Wales. There won't be much. Once you get to places like Canberra, it should be mostly dry, and westerly winds blowing through over Tasmania. Okay, let's go into the weekend. So the remnants of Tropical Cyclone Sean are lying here around southwest corner of Western Australia. Notice how this tropical cyclone's dragged down that red line. That's that tropical airflow. Now, it might lose some of its humidity over the desert, but certainly hot weather coming through to the southwestern corner of Australia. On the other side, it's cooler because high pressure to the south is driving in a slightly more refreshing airflow, southerly for Victoria, south to southeasterlies into New South Wales. That hot weather is from about Brisbane northwards, so you won't be feeling quite as hot further down the country that you go on that southeastern side. So southeastern corner of Australia is cooler on Saturday. The southwestern corner is hotter as that cyclone drags down that humid air. Now on Sunday, you get the refreshing change over there around Perth, Fremantle, southwards. On the other side, the heat drops down. So we're sort of changing the balance from one side to the other side. And so the heat tips over to the eastern side a lot more on Sunday. We see more severe thunderstorms around Queensland. That's probably the biggest change. Windy north to northwesterly winds, northeasterly winds, depending on where you are, northerly quarter winds for that eastern coastal side of New South Wales from about the hills and plateaus eastwards. You got that wind coming through, not much happening the further south you go, the drier it gets, and pretty dry in Tasmania. Dry through central parts of Australia too, if you're around Alice Springs down to Uluru. That is all from me. Pretty quiet week coming up, really, when you think about it. Got that tropical cyclone offshore, but really, that is about it. That's all from me for today. I will see you again on Thursday this week with more details. Have a great week ahead.